Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast entitled The Secret War on Cash, where we take a look at some of the emerging developments in the financial markets and the economy, both domestically and globally. And I have with me my co-host, Chris Agelastos. Chris, good morning. How are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here, as always. And we are going to begin this podcast actually talking about the BRICS nations. And for those of you who aren't tuned in or, subscribed to this podcast, please do so. This BRICS topic has been one that's really been fascinating to kind of follow and cover over the course of a little over a year now. BRICS as an alliance has been around, since 2001, but really started to get very aggressive and active in terms of their pursuits. Roughly, 2 years ago, give or take, maybe a little less than that?
Yeah, that's where they were really picking up speed.
So it's become quite a thing. And, as we've talked about before, what's really interesting about it is it's not something that you really hear a lot about in our here in the United States as it relates to, like, if you're watching CNBC, for instance, where they're covering the different things that happen in the financial markets and the economy around the world. For some reason, BRICS doesn't even hit the radar. But what is interesting is finally, and we've talked about this first article we're going to look here out of the Jerusalem Post. It's the title of it: as BRICS accumulate gold, BRICS nations, because they've been next to the central banks. It's been BRICS and the central banks that have been accumulating all the gold. Western banks continue to short sell, and the bottom line is the beginning of this article, Chris. Really, it says a mouthful, and we've talked about this. BRICS plus, they're calling it BRICS plus nations now, by the way, because BRICS started off as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But now, they've got a list that is growing by leaps and bounds. But the BRICS Plus nations hoard gold as Western banks gamble on short positions. And this is the key, and we talked about this. Ignoring the looming financial crisis. Will the West awaken to reclaim its golden edge in time? So the beauty of this article, Chris, I don't even have to ask a question. The article did. So will the West awaken to reclaim its golden age in time?
Well, it seems like we are waking up a little bit. We've seen, gold move quite a bit in the markets this year, and especially the last few months. In September, there was a good amount of inflows into precious metal ETFs. So that's a good sign. But the real question is, and they pose this in the article here, is it too little, too late? They kind of relate it to bringing a water pistol to a wildfire, which we have a lot of here in the West, wildfires, that is.
That's
and
right.
I can tell you, a water pistol isn't going to do much, right? So that's really the big question. Too little, too late. A lot of gold has been moving from the West, Western nations to the East. And they've been accumulating since at least 2016, really picking up speed in 2020, 2021 through this year. And it's really one of the biggest transfers of wealth moving from the West to the East. So you really have to ask yourself, are we going to be able to slow down this freight train? And I really don't think so. We can do things to maybe mitigate some of the damage. We can certainly hope that some of their plans, BRICS plans, don't work out the way they expect. Maybe we'll have a little luck fall in our favor. That would certainly be nice. But with banks holding all these short positions and the price continuing to really skyrocket this year, we're up, $300-$400 an ounce, something like that in the last year. The banks are holding a lot of pressure, and this could be something similar to maybe the subprime markets, around 2008, 2009, that caused some major disruptions in the world, but especially here in the U.S. And so that's the big question. Some of it is just wait and see, but it's not looking good. I wouldn't go out there and celebrate just yet.
Right. Right. Well, and it is interesting, and maybe maybe like the first little let up in BRICS that you'll see in this article, India's foreign minister, excuse me,
Hmm.
and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but he said that in an announcement that India has no plan to target the U.S. dollar. And
Yeah.
that's pretty major because the at the forefront of everything, every article that comes out, every discussion really pertaining to BRICS is riddled with that term or that phrase, whatever you would like to call it, de-dollarization,
Yeah.
and the specific intent to dethrone the U.S. dollar. And it was interesting that he pulled back a little bit and actually even said, we have never actively targeted the U.S. dollar. And the reason I find this interesting, there's two aspects of this. First off, as the article says here, this statement stood in direct odds with the Chinese and the Russians, number one.
Yeah.
But number two, if you remember, I'm not sure, but I think India was the first nation to embrace doing non-dollar, petrodollar transactions for oil. I'm
Right.
sure they were the first. And so, that is a direct shot at the United States, at the U.S. dollar. And there's
Yeah.
reason it did it, but it did find it interesting that, that there's these rumblings that are taking place. Now, if we look at, where BRICS is heading or where it's going even further, this next article, we have North Americans are starting to apply now for BRICS membership.
Right.
And as I saw that article, we've been reading about, hearing about, talking about how BRICS is growing so much. But now, as we look at it, and you throw North American countries into the mix, immediately what kind of I envisioned, or what struck me, Chris, is it's kind of like they're closing in on us. Now,
Yeah.
they're talking specifically in this article about Cuba, and
Right.
Cuba certainly doesn't wield the same heavy sword as somebody like a China, or Russia, or an India, but it's the starting of this. It's a continuance, I should say, of this progression of development of BRICS.
Yeah.
And do you think that we're going to see more of this out of North American countries? And if so, is this something that you think is going to happen sooner or later?
Entirely possible. If you look back at the Cold War, right, when Russia wanted to pressure the U.S., they started moving physical weapons to Cuba, right? Now maybe they're moving a financial weapon, and we've read a lot about future battles between large nations are going to be fought on largely financial battlefields. I don't know that we here in the U.S. necessarily have to worry about being invaded, by another nation's army. But if they can weaken our dollar, if they can continue to come over here and purchase U.S. businesses, purchase land. I mean, I'm sure some of our viewers and listeners, if they follow U.S. markets, you'll hear all the time about other countries buying up our farmland, right? There was a big thing here, even in Arizona, with Saudi Arabia purchasing water rights and using it to grow a lot of alfalfa, I think it was, for their Arabian show horses. And basically, kind of pilfering our local resources and moving that off to another nation. So it certainly could become a bigger thing. Now, do I think that Canada is gonna jump over to BRICS anytime soon? No, but perhaps Mexico could be a little bit more easily influenced. And so it's hard to say for certain, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on.
Right, right, and it is. Well, and, you talk about that's the interesting and fascinating dynamic about BRICS is that they each represent their own nation, the people who join. They collectively control a certain amount of resources,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start looking at the different moves that each of these nations make, and it has a ripple effect, because not only are they doing things that bolster their economy, but they're doing things that will help bolster BRICS, and it kind of becomes like I don't know what you call it, almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, the strength that they're building, because they're drawing strength from several different areas. And
Yeah.
that's why, again, like, as I mentioned from the opening of our podcast here today, this has been really kind of fascinating to watch, kind of scary in a way, scary just in so much as that, it would appear as though if things continue the way they're going, it doesn't look good for the US dollar, and, what the fallout from that might be. But just interesting to see, how something just kind of was birthed into existence, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow. And by the way, we're a week away from the
their
BRICS,
summit,
which will be in Kazan. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, well, thank you for that, Chris. And for those of you tuning in, this is what we are talking about when we refer to the secret war on cash, the secret war on your cash, on my cash, on all of our cash. And if you want to learn more about some of the other things that are happening with this war, and some of the things maybe you could even do about it, contact our office, ask for some information at 1-800-289-2646. There is no charge for it. Start a conversation, get some questions answered, and see what kind of things you might be able to do. You can also do that by visiting us online at www.swissamerica, SWISS America, all one word, .com. Thanks for tuning in, Chris. Thanks for being here, and look forward to talking more about this in the future.
All right, take care.